former political editor of The Sun. It's the brilliant Trevor Kavanagh, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to say good morning, good afternoon, Trevor. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Alex. I'm very well. I hope you are.
Yeah, I'm not too bad at all. It's amazing. You get sort of inundated with all the horrible headlines and somehow you just got a KBO. Let's talk about this poll commissioned by an entity, Best for Britain, who clearly wanted a specific answer, which says that immigration is not the top of people's concerns. It's a manufactured panic because when YouGov, who were commissioned to do this poll, asked the sample size of people, 26% of them said that immigration and asylum was one of the three most important issues facing their community. So therefore, by a process of deduction, about 3/4 of people don't think it is an issue where they live. That actually doesn't surprise me.
Well, I think this is what you call a real rogue poll, and I can only account for it by the fact that it must have been carried out inside the Home Office or outside an immigration tribunal interviewing the judges or something of that sort. I mean, if you extrapolated this, you would put Nigel Farage and Reform in third place behind the Tories. This is the biggest issue. It's overtaken and outstripped the economy in many cases, in many polls. It is the most important issue. And there's good reason for that, because this is something that is now transforming Britain almost in the blink of an eye historically, from one sort of country into another. And an awful lot of people are very uncomfortable with that.
But this is the thing, it does go to show that this is a postcode lottery, because over half of those polled said it's one of the biggest problems facing the country as a whole, but only 26% say it's in their community, which goes to show that what we've done is created a balkanised, ghettoised nation where if you go to Bradford or Rotherham or Southall or Uxbridge or parts of Cardiff or parts of Birmingham or parts of Manchester, then you are going to be swamped with immigration. You would have seen the nature of your high streets irrevocably changed. All the problems that come with the lack of integration and importing foreign cultures that frankly cannot be symbiotic with our own is very clear. But if you move out to where I've just moved out to, Trev, with the lovely green rolling hills of the Cotswolds and neighbours who say moo, you would think it isn't a problem. And that's the point. What we have done is created a country which at this point is fragmented at best and in you know, up the proverbial creek without a paddle in various cities that I just think now can't be changed. It can't be reversed.
Exactly true, and I think the word you really are looking for there is ghettos.
Yeah.
We've got vast ghettos forming willingly and spontaneously by those who want to live there, but they are totally separate from the mainstream part of Britain, wherever you are. And I mean, even in Tower Hamlets, I live in the city of London, which is on the border of Tower Hamlets. And you are literally moving, if you walk in that direction, it's not very far, you're walking into Karachi or some other part of the subcontinent. So, and Southall, I mean, I was born in Southall. It has totally transformed since I was there as a child. And so have huge swathes of Britain. I mean, these aren't small ghettos. These are areas which actually dominate the community. In Birmingham in particular, where rabble-rousers are planning a big protest about issues concerning Islam and so on November the 6th, I think that this is an indicator we should be seriously worrying about, because it shows that there's a tinder sort of box out there waiting for a spark which could really seriously ignite in a bad way.
Oh, I think it's going to. Now, you referred then to a particular young man called Ahmed Yaqub. Oh, I know him well. He hasn't libelled me for a while, old Ahmed. Normally I get a nice little legal letter from him and his solicitor saying, you've talked about me, don't forget that. He's that, you know, I'm going to refer to it again. He's that spiv, I love that good old-fashioned word, who was the lawyer who represented the two Manchester airport thugs and tried to sort of create a grievance narrative and get everyone to protest after the police station when this video was deliberately circulated, which just showed a little snapshot of what happened at the airport that day when these two young men were battering cops who have now been charged with their offences, and the police officers accused of racially motivated attacks have been cleared. But he was the one trying to generate this sort of, you know, hubbub of opprobrium against what had gone on that day and get all of his followers out onto the streets. And here he is at it again. Take it away, Ahmed.
Activists are planning to do a complete shutdown of Birmingham on November 6th. I've heard activists from all over the country are going to be present in Birmingham on November 6th because they want to show solidarity with the Palestinians, and they also want to show the far right that we as a community can unite against racism, can unite against fascism, and hopefully the numbers that I am getting or predictions of people coming is over 300,000 people at this moment in time, and I'm sure more people will join the movement and more people will join the cause closer to the game. West Midlands Police need to take some action because violence is something that we do not want, but we do have a right to protest, to do static protests all over Birmingham, and we will exercise that right. And I will support all the activists that are involved in these protests.
We don't want violence. Well, I think he might be using a bit of tequila there, I think. Allege. I'm not saying you are, just saying you might be. That's my opinion, Mr. Yaqub, before I get another legal letter. But that terrifies me. What are they protesting against? Where is this fascism? Where is this racism? Where is this violence against his community? Because I haven't read any of that in the newspapers. As far as I can tell, it seems to largely be going in the opposite direction. The pictures the other day of the so-called protests in Tower Hamlets, where they all come out in balaclavas and black puffer jackets, terrifies me to the bone. If he does get 300,000, that is a good 5 times larger than the full-time employed standing army of the United Kingdom. That is really frightening.
And indeed, the very presence of such a large number bellowing their hearts out is an act of violence in itself. I mean, civil protest is all very well, and it's a sacred part of our constitution, but it can be taken too far. And the sight of this man, who's supposed to be a solicitor, dressed up in black with a hoodie ready to put on as soon as he turns the camera off, is representative of a growing and rather worrying, indeed alarming, presence of people who are willing to shout at us, shout us down, and dress in what looks like semi-military attire, certainly very menacing, black hoods, black balaclavas, where they're selling these balaclavas at £5 a piece. So hide your face and save a case. So you're not going to be charged if you're wearing a balaclava because they can't identify you. I think that these things should be banned, and I think protests march on that sort of scale for no good reason except to try to agitate over Palestine, which has nothing to do with Britain. I think they should be banned. I frankly do.
I totally agree with you, and it does terrify me because when you look at the sheer numbers, you know, when I was growing up, this sort of stuff just didn't exist, and it starts to creep in slowly at first. You know, you have the Batley school teacher who's gone into hiding. No one knows what's happened to him in all the years since that occurred, and no one does anything. Then the tail starts wagging the dog even more, and now we're on the brink of a situation where, frankly, what looks to me like a sort of standing Muslim militia are prepared to take to our streets. And frankly, if they were to coordinate, if they were to decide they mean us harm, I think that they could execute it.
Yes, and I worry that we're not just on the brink, that we've already crossed that line. I think that they're making it very clear that pushed, in their eyes at least, too far, they will react, and they will react violently. And they know that the police are running scared. They're not going to deal with them as they should be dealt with and would be dealt with if they're white, whether they're right-wing or left-wing protesters, they will be dealt with. But because they are non-white, they are sacred and therefore untouchable, and therefore the police have no control, no authority. And this makes certain parts of Britain no-go zones.
No, absolutely. And the problem is these people confect a grievance narrative. There you have Ahmed Yaqub going, we've got to stop the racism, the violence against our community. We've got to show solidarity with Palestine. So what? Why? We don't have to. It's nothing to do with us. But they confect a grievance narrative, which is what they then sell to all of their adherents to then encourage people to go out and start to dominate this country, to give an excuse and justification of how the tail is going to wag the dog, which is already taking place. I don't know how we reverse this. I don't know how we get ourselves out of this pickle. I really do not. I don't know. I mean,
No.
what would the next government be able to do to be able to suddenly change all of this and set us back on the right path?
The worrying thing is that this guy Yaqub is talking about acting in the light of Allah, and therefore this is redolent of Islamic State. I think that there's not much to separate the two things in certain areas of Britain's activist Muslim community. And I agree with you that any government that came in and tried to reverse or halt this is going to be in some considerable difficulty. And I think that you would have not just the Muslim community or the immigrant community, but also the Greens and Labour and the Socialists and Jeremy Corbyn all mobilising in one against a Farage-led administration that tried to make any changes or amendments to the way these people behave.
I mean, what you say has been reflected in claims by Zara Sultana that Nigel Farage is a danger, that he has features of a fascist. She's done an interview for the BBC's Political Thinking with Nick Robinson, and she's accused Reform MPs of being committed to peddling racism and actually compared him to Franco, Mussolini and Hitler. I don't understand why these people are given a platform, because if that, to me, pointing at a man who's been in politics for 35 years, who actually has had already death threats made against him, who's had violence committed against him. We've had people throwing milkshakes on him, wet cement chucked at him. This, to me, is actually trying to encourage a vicious attack. I don't think she should be platformed. I don't think the BBC should have allowed her to even make those comments on air. They should have been edited out. Because if I went on and I happened to say on this show, which I wouldn't, but I'm just going to say hypothetically, so therefore I will say it, I think Zara Sultana is a racist and a fascist and an Islamist or whatever, right? If I said those things about her and meant it, then I would get into a whole world of trouble. I would be told I was inciting violence against a woman, that I was libelling her, that this is a smear campaign, that I'm nasty, that I'm a bigot. No one would allow me to turn around and point the finger at her and accuse her of the level of the sort of things she's saying about Nigel Farage and Reform, which in my mind is actively encouraging. If you sort of create this idea, this image that someone is such a barbaric existential threat to humanity, to security in this country, to a particular subset of society, the subset of society that Ahmed Yaqub is trying to create a grievance narrative for, then what you're doing is you're encouraging those people to think, right, I've got to take matters into my own hands. I must rise up and use whatever force is necessary to prevent this threat, because at the end of the day, my safety and my family's safety is on the line. This is utterly reprehensible, and frankly, I'm fed up now. I'm fed up with legacy media channels like the BBC platforming this stuff as if it's okay to bandy about such accusations. It is not.
Well, all of the accusations that you would like to level at Ms. Sultana are justified. They're all true, but you cannot say that thing because she is a minority so far. And but they are not a minority when they amalgamate with the parties like the Greens and the Labour left and others. They become quite a significant minority to the point where their hideous accusations have to be taken into account. Sometimes we have to hear from people on the wilder side of politics just to see how serious the problem is. And I think the fact that you're illustrating and highlighting what she said does some good in terms of turning that into an argument against her.
I think in the wake of what happened to Charlie Kirk, the BBC should have gone, you cannot make those sorts of accusations. They're dangerous, they're inflammatory, they're not able to be substantiated, and either really forcefully come down and oppose them on air so it can be heard in the course of the interview, or they should not be published at all, because I think we've got to the stage now, may God protect that man's bones, that people like Nigel Farage are very much at risk of facing violence against him. I can't believe we live in a country where that is the case, but I think that we have to be very alive to that. I know the man very well. I've known him for 20 years and I worry daily about his safety and security, particularly as this government seems to have stripped him of the rights of being protected by the state. It just, you know, I sometimes begin to wonder what sort of sinister agenda they actually have.
I think that without his private bodyguards, Nigel Farage could not consider him safe walking the streets of Britain. There's no two ways about that. But I think that's a really serious problem. Yeah. And you're quite right that when Sultana was interviewed, she should have been challenged and put on the spot by Nick Robinson. I don't think that anyone should be able to come out with those sort of claims, which are standard fare from the left, I have to say, and I've been the target of similar charges myself, without being challenged by the host of the programme. I mean, the BBC's duty is one of impartiality. How does she justify these claims, these absurd insinuations? And I mean, you're getting letters, libel letters from Mr. Yaqub. I think that you're entitled to fire off a few yourself.
No, well, I think I find this deeply alarming, and I'm fed up now with elements of the mainstream media, not mainstream media, legacy media. The government surely knows they have the ability to deal with this. I do not believe for one moment when you've got a majority of that size, that, and there's plenty of other things that governments seem to be able to magically do, like lock us up all in our houses when there's a pandemic. They've got the levers they can pull to address these issues. They can declare a national emergency. They can use the basis of the statistics inquiry to say, look, we cannot go on like this, and sort this out. I don't understand why they are not.
Police have got their hands full, haven't they? They've got to get out and arrest people for not carrying poo bags. They haven't got time for real crime. They have never actually tackled this in the way that it needs and deserves to be tackled, because we come up against the human rights laws. And so you get the Albanian crime gangster who insists that he can't be deported back home because his children don't like chicken nuggets in his hometown, or Romania, I can't remember which country it was. But this is symptomatic of the entire problem of illegal immigration. It is untouchable under both governments. To be fair to the Labour Party, the Tories were no better on this than the Labour Party is at the moment. Maybe a little bit better. But Labour is simply following the trend of those Home Office officials who basically run the country without any reference to democracy or the views of their ministers or the government or the elected officials. And so, you know, frankly, we've lost this one.
Yeah.
We've lost it, and we're not going to recapture it. Not under this government, not under the Tories, and I worry not even under a Farage-led reform government. No,
I don't. I mean, it's very hard to reverse the damage that's already been done. I think there needs to be some sort of transparency audit on some of these immigration lawyers, because it's very clear to me that there is an international illegal immigration industrial complex. And I wonder quite how many of those people who suddenly pop up have links to the NGOs and have links to the people traffickers themselves and are making a pretty penny out of the destruction of this nation. Trevor, thank you ever so much. Former political editor of The Sun, the one and only Trevor Kavanagh. I love that man. I love that man dearly. What a national treasure.